Welcome back to the Personal Experience Podcast. My name is Jules Scott, and my guest today is Matloc Russo. And Matt joins me today to talk about his personal experience with COVID-19, aka the coronavirus. Hey, Matt, welcome.
Hello. Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. I mean, we've known each other for a long time now. It feels like forever.
It does, in a good way.
In a good way. And This is the first time I'm having you on any podcast experience that I'm doing. I'm really glad to do it. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to talk to me about something that was probably not the easiest experience to go through.
No, definitely not.
Well, let's start from the beginning so that people understand and know who you are. So if you haven't learned or know who Matt or Matloc is, I'd like to have you tell us where you live, who you are, and what you do.
Sure. My name is Matt. I live in Jersey City, New Jersey. So I'm a stone's throw from the World Trade Center, actually, at this point in time.
Yeah.
What I do, a bunch of different stuff. First off, I'm an architecture student. I just turned 35 and I'm still in school because that seemed like a great idea. I stream on Twitch. I live direct for a company that we both work with, actually. I make YouTube videos on tech reviews. I am a husband to a wonderful redheaded woman who keeps me sane all the time. I am a parent for 2 dogs, and I do a lot of different things. I tend bar, whatever I can do to keep myself going through school and working towards that end goal. Right now.
And we're birthday buddies. Your birthday is a day before mine.
Yep.
We just both celebrated birthdays this past weekend. And,
Indeed we did.
And you did. Okay, so this actually really impressed me because I know that it's only been a few months since you've recovered from COVID, and you managed to do a 24-hour stream to raise money for charity for your birthday.
I did, yeah.
I mean, I was actually thinking about this and going, is he going to be okay?
It was a little rough. And you can't see it right now, but I would use the term recovered with air quotes around it.
Yeah.
Because there's still a lot going on with it. It was an experience. I was planning to go the full 1 to 120. I did a leveling stream in World of Warcraft, started at level 1, wanted to end at 120. But we hit our goals. It was 24 hours. I hit level 100. It was a nice even number. And I said, you know what? I'm not putting out a good product anymore. My wife has left, so I can't bounce things off her. Everybody that was in my Discord channel left, so I couldn't bounce things off them. I was just talking to the Nether. And I said, I'm going to pull the plug now. I'm starting to see things. It was time to go.
Well, 24 hours staying awake is a feat of strength that I can't do. And, so part of me, I spend a lot of time, of course, doing, reading social media and research about things and wondering and trying to learn as much as I can about the coronavirus, but COVID-19 and the things that have affected people. Mm-hmm. And I found myself worried about you. Like, I just hope that there's not after effects or things that have kept you from feeling like you could go 24 hours and not detrimentally affect your health. And so I was actually worried about you when you said you're going to do them. Like, he's a madman. He's crazy.
Thank you very much for your concern. I was a little concerned. My wife was a little concerned. My mother was a lot concerned.
Was she?
Yeah, she was texting my wife pretty early in the morning just to make sure that everything was okay. I did put a lot of prep in. I wish that I had put a little more prep in physically if I ever do this again. And it went pretty well. We hit all our goals. So it's something that I would like to consider doing in the future. I would probably put a little more prep in to get myself physically more prepared for it. Mentally, I think I was there.
Yeah.
But if, I slept a little more, got myself in a little better shape, I feel like I would have been okay.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on meeting all the goals that you set for yourself for that.
Thank you very much.
It's amazing. And I want to talk to you about where this all kind of began, my concerns, and of course, your experience with COVID-19 and when you discovered and started feeling symptoms. When did this all start?
Let's see. So I tested positive on the 27th of March. I would say about a week before that. So probably about the 20th. Mm-hmm. A couple of days after that, maybe the 22nd. I think it was a Sunday, if I remember correctly. I wasn't feeling great before then, just feeling a little lethargic. Thought maybe, I have a cold. I haven't really been around anybody lately. I had been wearing masks. But as I said, I'm a bartender, so who knows who was coming in and out of my bar before then.
Right.
then on the 22nd, I was sitting at my computer, getting ready to do a stream actually, and my wife was cooking. And my kitchen is literally right next to my computer. My condo is very large and open concept, and the stovetop is, I'd say, probably about 12 feet away from me. And she was sautéing shallot and bacon, which should have been very fragrant, to say the least. And I had no idea that she was cooking.
Really?
It didn't even occur to me until she said, "Man, this smells so great." And I turned and I said, "What does?" "Oh, okay."
Oh.
Yeah, at that point, I said, "Oh man, this is probably a problem."
Yeah.
Because that was right at about that point they had said that loss of smell, sense of smell, and loss of sense of taste was a pretty big determining factor that you
Right.
probably had COVID.
So at that point,
And
you thought you just had a regular cold or something of that
yeah,
nature.
it didn't feel, it didn't feel horrible. I just kind of felt, like I said, a little lethargic, and I wasn't having crazy shortness of breath or coughing or anything like that. And then from there, it just kind of went downhill after that.
So what happened in after you had discovered that you didn't have any smell
Yeah.
and realized that this could be COVID? I mean, that's pretty early on in the whole process of like when people started to make some pretty strong warnings of stay inside, don't go out. We don't know what's going on. And not a lot of testing was happening. What happened next?
Um, So I was just kind of hanging out at home, and my symptoms didn't seem too bad, but I was starting to deteriorate a little bit. But I obviously wanted to isolate myself and my wife from anybody. We didn't want to potentially get anyone else sick. So we started to have people do food shopping for us and just drop things off. We threw a mask on and walked the dogs around the block if we had to, and then Lysol wiped everything on our way back in. It was just basically cutting off all human contact for us at that point. It was trying to make sure that we were minimizing our spread as much as was humanly possible, if at all possible.
So how long did your symptoms wind up lasting for you?
About 3 weeks, give or take. And technically speaking, I guess I still have symptoms. I still cannot taste or smell. And we're going on, I guess, about 4 months.
You're kidding. You still can't?
No, I still cannot. I can taste very, very sweet things and incredibly salty things. I taste just the salt of them. And then it's kind of an odd phenomenon. Anytime I eat something, I get what I can only describe as a taste, but it's inside my nose. And it's kind of like, you ever jump in the pool, like a really chlorinated pool, and you get that burn when the water rushes up your nose?
Yes.
Okay. It's not the burn, but it's like that after feeling where stuff just feels weird and smells weird. I get that every time that I eat something, and it's not enjoyable. It's really not fun.
No,
especially for a fat kid like me.
I mean, do you feel like eating at this point?
Yes, but only the worst possible things for me. Because they're the only things that I can taste. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So everything else is just, it doesn't even have any appeal.
Yeah, no, for a while it was great because I lost some weight initially because I had no desire to eat whatsoever. And then as I discovered the couple things that I can taste, it's not good. It's like, just every like Italian specialty pastry that you possibly can, and just random sugary things, and hey honey, bake me some cookies, like you name it. If it's bad for me, I'll eat it right now.
But how bad did those symptoms get for you during the full-on infection for you?
So it was not enjoyable. As my wife would say, and she did end up contracting COVID as well. I mean, we kind of figured, right? We lived together. We were kissing each other before we knew that we had it. It felt like I was dying at points in time. Like nobody was. Everybody's like, hey, if you're young and you're healthy, and I'm relatively healthy, right? I have back issues, but nothing that should really exacerbate COVID.
Right.
Everyone says if you're young and you're healthy, you're going to come out just fine. And ultimately, I suppose I did, right? I still have some reduced lung capacity now, I think, but we'll go down that road when we get there.
Yeah.
What they don't tell you is while it's going on, you feel like you're dying. Like, it was not fun in any way. Walking the dogs, as I said, we walk the dogs around the block, sometimes just up and down the block, and it felt like we ran a marathon.
Wow.
Coming upstairs still to this day wins me. And I purposely take the stairs all the time. I try to avoid elevators, and it knocks the wind out of me.
Wow.
I had a fever for, I think, about 12 days straight.
Gosh. And
everything.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Everything just kind of felt like it was just knocking the absolute shit out of you. It was horrible. I was tired all the time. I was sleeping a lot, and I still felt tired afterwards. It was not enjoyable whatsoever.
Did one or the other of you, between you and your wife, have a worse case?
I would say, as far as symptoms go, my wife probably had worse symptoms later on. My symptoms, she never had a fever, ironically enough, but had worse physical manifestations of COVID. There was a point in time after we thought that we had turned the corner. I was feeling pretty much okay. She had felt good for a few days before then, that we were just sitting eating dinner, and she was just completely and totally unable to breathe for a period of time.
Wow.
And we both started to freak out. And I said, all right, I'm going to take you to the hospital. And she didn't want to go to the hospital at all because she knew that I wouldn't be able to go in with her.
Right.
I said, okay, well, that's fine. If you can lay down in bed right now, then you can stay home. Otherwise, I'm taking you to the damn hospital. And she laid down, and it sounded like she was drowning in her own body.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, all right, fuck it. Get in the car right now. I drove down the street to the hospital. They said that her pulse oxygen was low enough that they would admit her under normal circumstances, but they were totally out of beds. So they actually saw her in a hallway. And when they were done, they said, there's nothing we can do for you right now. Go home. Just, sit up. Don't sleep laying down.
So was there any breathing treatment or anything they could do for her while she was there?
While she was there, no. Her pulse ox was in the other upper 80s or low 90s, which is,
that's
not
dangerous.
great.
Yeah. That's dangerous.
And the next day we did a telehealth visit with her doctor, and she gave her an albuterol inhaler, I think, or some sort of inhaler, and that helped a lot.
Good.
But that was pretty much it. They couldn't do anything for her at the hospital because they were just so damn overwhelmed.
And that was during the time where New York and New Jersey were just absolutely slammed by COVID.
Yeah, that was actually while we were on the uptick. That wasn't even when it was at its peak. We were still getting to our peak at that point in time.
How scary was all of this?
That's the $24,000 question.
Mm-hmm.
It was absolutely terrifying, truth be told. And there's not a lot that I'm afraid of. Like, I'm a 6'4", 260-pound dude who feels like he could handle anything. I'm 35. I still feel like I'm invulnerable. And to have to drop your wife off at a hospital and say, I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again, because people are dropping dead of this left and right. And we had done, we thought, everything right at this point in time, was fucking terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. How long did it take for Melissa to start kind of, after her televisit, did she start kind of feeling like she could be on her own again, not worrying about whether she could breathe?
It was probably about 2 days after the inhaler kicked in, that she started to feel good.
That's a long 48 hours of not being able to breathe comfortably.
Yeah, it was rough, but the inhaler did offer, a level of relief that wasn't there. We said, this is actually being treated now. It's not just us isolating ourselves, which is everything that we had done up to that point. Even when I had a fever, I was able to be tested and confirm that I had COVID, but my symptoms weren't bad enough that they were going to admit me. I could still breathe. Mm-hmm. So it was just stay home and monitor, and you feel like shit, but too bad. Just stay home and monitor. There are other people that we have to deal with that are going to die from this.
Right. Did you get tested more than once during the process?
At that point in time, no. I have been tested since then.
Okay. And so after everything kind of passed, how many times have you been tested?
One other time, and I will be tested again tomorrow.
Oh, you will? Okay.
Yes.
And are they doing research related to trying to figure out like antibodies or anything related to your experience to kind of help with scientists' findings.
It's great that you asked that, because I just received a call from the Jersey City Board of Health today
Oh,
to ask me a whole bunch of demographic questions, and questions about my experience. And I think a lot of what they were doing, it was a little bit of contact tracing, obviously well past when I had it. But I think it was predominantly to figure out what my symptoms were and how they affected me as specifically a Caucasian male
right.
versus how it would affect people in other demographic groups.
Okay. And have you done anything else related to like kind of post testing or scientific research?
So both my wife and I attempted to donate plasma, but couldn't actually get through to anyone at a point in time where the convalescent plasma would have been good enough to be used,
Oh, wow.
which was frustrating, incredibly, painfully, horribly frustrating. I emailed Red Cross, New York Blood Center, individual hospitals, and nobody got back to us for, I would say, about a month and a half. I received an email about 2 weeks ago, but it's so long. If you're going to donate plasma for this, it needs to be within the first month of recovery for it to truly be effective, or so they say right now.
Wow.
So they're not interested in our plasma anymore, which was painfully, painfully frustrating.
Yeah. Obviously, because you wanted to help.
Yeah. As far as research, no. I mean, I was open to. I was expecting calls earlier on in the process. I'm an open book. I mean, obviously, I'm doing this podcast and telling you everything that I can about it. I'm willing to help out whatever way I can, and not a whole lot came through. I mean, granted, we are in New Jersey. New York is right there, so there are a lot of people to follow up with. But I was kind of hoping that a little more would be done a little earlier with us.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, interesting that you are getting contacted now
Yeah.
with all of the pieces in there. But I have a feeling that there's still so much information that needs to be collected in order to try to figure all of this out.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So what kinds of things, you've talked about how you can't taste anything still. What other symptoms have you been experiencing months after your recovery?
I still, without a doubt, have reduced lung capacity.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's still now. Granted, I have gained a little bit of weight, but not to the point where I'm going to be winded from coming up a flight of stairs.
Right.
And it was an awful experience, just walking to my condo door. Walking the dogs can still knock the wind out of me from time to time. That's pretty much it for me. Of course, now I'm going to be a little bit paranoid, and anytime I have a cold or anything like that, assume that it is somehow related.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I can't really say that anything has really stuck.
Huh. And has anything different been experienced by your wife in terms of long-term symptoms or things that have kind of lingered?
Not that I could tell. So she never lost her taste of sense or smell, or taste of smell, sense of taste or smell.
Yep.
Wow, there we go. She never lost her senses. So that would be the one factor that is really easy to pinpoint. Like, if you can't smell something or taste something.
Right.
Anything else, there are so many different factors that can be attributed to it. Like, one could say, hey, you've been sitting at home, sheltering in place for months. Maybe that's why you've lost some lung capacity or feel winded when you're exerting yourself in any small way. So it's a little more difficult to pin those down specifically, though knowing my body, I just kind of feel like that's still, kicking up for me.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what has happened in the world, especially around where you live, related to COVID, and how you feel about it as someone who has recovered from it and knows firsthand what's going on. I mean, we're sitting here today. We're recording this on July 15th. And in the news today, there have just been reports of the attacks on Dr. Anthony Fauci from the Trump administration, and that they're now no longer allowing hospitals to report data directly to the CDC. That's going to go to a different federally appointed source, and so on and so on. People not wearing masks, refusing to wear masks. And we are in the middle of a massive respike of cases. I want to hear it from you. I want to know what it feels like for you seeing all of this as someone who has recovered from this directly.
I'm going to speak directly
Please
to
do.
anyone who has who feels that this is a hoax or you don't need to wear a mask or anything like that. And I apologize, but please allow me to be blunt. Are you out of your fucking minds? Hundreds of thousands of people in this country alone have died. I just I don't I don't understand if it's something that has to happen where somebody comes down with this. It is life altering. It is potentially life altering to a point where you may never gain that lung capacity back if you recover. Mm-hmm. It is potentially life altering to a point where you may not recover. There is nothing that is easier than wearing a damn mask. Just put it on, listen to scientists. Like, it's not difficult. I promise you, it's not difficult. There is a reason that there is a correlation between people not wearing masks and ignoring social distancing and sudden spikes in coronavirus cases. Even if you think this is manufactured, if you think that it is something that was made in a lab, guess what? It exists, it's here, just deal with it. Just deal with it. It's simple. Please, please, just deal with it and wear a damn mask and stay away from people. Listen, I've lost my job. I can't bartend right now for obvious reasons. I lost my good architecture job. I was furloughed for a period of time and now I've been laid off. Mm-hmm. I'm affected financially by this as well. And I am telling you, I'm affected directly financially by not being able to just go to my bar and do the easiest thing that I could do, which is serve people drinks and they hand me money. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that because people aren't going to die. Yeah. Plain and simple. It's just wear a damn mask.
And the questions that I've really struggled a lot of times just trying to understand. Like I know someone in my podcast communities who has been a fan of my shows, who's ordered commissions from me, and wore a mask. Like I saw him on Instagram wearing a mask out and about, and he died last week from.
That's horrible.
Yeah. And so, but I the reason why I'm doing this show, Matt, is because I feel that it is so important to hear from people directly about their personal experiences, because it is a problem for people who don't know what it's like to experience and to the point where people don't believe that it is truth or that it is a situation that they should be concerned about, or that it doesn't affect them because they've never seen it or heard it. Now you've heard from Matt, you've heard from me that I've known someone who's died from it. And so it becomes, what else can we do? I ask you that, what else can we do?
Listen, I don't know. And I don't know why this has become a political issue, but it has. A little more background on me. I, for many years, was a volunteer EMT. I started writing as what we called a third at the time when I was 16 years old, and became an EMT as soon as I was able to when I was 18. And a woman who largely got me into emergency medical services is a staunch right winger, and has now started posting things like, "This is made up. I'm not wearing a mask. This is my liberty. This is false. Not believing Fauci." And this is a person who literally provided emergency medical services to people with diseases like this in the past. And I just don't understand how people can allow their political allegiance. Why is wearing a mask a political thing? It just doesn't make sense to me. Mm-hmm. What can we do is realize that we need to depoliticize medicine and caring for your neighbors and caring for people that you don't know. Like, just realize that this is not a political thing. It is a quality of life. It is a human rights thing. We all have the right to live. That's the right that we should be concerned with, not the right to wear a mask or not. Just wear the fucking mask and let somebody else live. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't know where your contact came from.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there are 10,000 different places it could be, obviously.
Right.
Early on they were saying don't wear masks, not because they didn't think it wasn't helpful, because there wasn't enough PPE to go around,
Right.
and people hadn't started making the cloth masks yet. Which now I have like 15 cloth masks. I have a different one for every day of the week.
Yep.
So, it could have come from my bar. It could have come from, my wife attended an event in New York before it really started to spike, but there were, a few hundred to 1,000 people there. It could have come from there. Now, granted, that was about 4 weeks beforehand, so it's unlikely. But it could have come from that. It could have come from going food shopping at the beginning of the pandemic, and not realizing that we touched our face or something. It could have come from the fact that until this charity stream, I had a very thick beard, and beards, were apparently a incubator for COVID and made it much easier to catch it. There are any number of factors of where it could have come from.
Yeah. And so now we have so much more information. Now we understand more about transmission. I mean, we still don't understand a lot of things because we just don't know. And we now face a very, very real situation. Now, neither you nor I have children, but we know people who have children, family members who do. And we are in the middle of July looking down the barrel of school beginning again in the fall. And it has, again, become an issue related to returning kids to school in classroom or not. And so this has been the most difficult thing, I think, recently. I don't know what it is. I've been feeling very tired again lately, like fatigued and emotionally drained. And it's because I'm seeing horrible things being said about putting kids back to school, and only X number of kids would have to die in order for this to be okay.
Yeah. Well, that harkens back to the open the economy, only old people will die, right?
Yeah.
It's the same story all over again. So my mother is a teacher. She teaches at a high school. My sister is getting her PsyD right now, but has worked as a long-term sub, specifically with special needs children, in the same school district that my mother teaches in. Neither one of them want to go back. My mother has diabetes. Diabetics seem to be at high risk when it comes to COVID. They're both providing excellent educations online. I go to school entirely online right now.
Right.
It's even if you're not convinced that children are going to carry or suffer from COVID, it's not just the children that you have to worry about. First off, I don't know where you are, but in New Jersey specifically, a lot of schools are older and don't necessarily have air conditioning or any ventilation. So you've now put a bunch of kids who, at the very least, are probably carrying something, right? And you've shoved them into a room and there's no ventilation, and they're there with teachers. And if you don't think it's the kids who are going to suffer, then who's going to teach them if the teachers end up catching COVID?
Right. Exactly.
At that point, is opening the schools all back up to 100% and making sure that you offer a 5-day-a-week option to parents. Is it worth it if they're not getting an education whatsoever? Do you just want school open because it's daycare? Because that's kind of what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
It seems like it's one of those situations where, hey, let's open this back up so we can kickstart the economy again. People can go back to work. If we have to go through this all over again, as has been said hundreds of times, if not thousands of times, if we have to start this all over again, instead of just nipping it in the bud, we're going to have a bigger recession or a depression or bigger issues economically down the road than we are by just dealing with it intelligently and scientifically.
Yeah.
And as you said earlier, to branch off of something that you mentioned a minute ago, we didn't know a lot early on, and people will use that as fodder for, well, these scientists don't know what they're doing. No, that is the scientific process. You figure out how things work, peers review it, you check it all over again, and you go forward with that new knowledge and new information.
Yeah.
Just let it work its way out.
That, I think, has been the most difficult thing for me to digest from people, is that it's just not understanding the scientific process. Nobody has ever experienced this virus before.
Right.
and it's not our government, and it's not, I mean, nobody.
Yeah.
It isn't. There is no one who has any expertise. And so the ones that will have the expertise are the scientists who actually have the abilities to study and eliminate all of the extra variables that are unknown, and then say, okay, well, not if this, then this, if this, then not. Okay. And so that, to me, I mean, my sister is a emergency room nurse in Central Jersey. And she has, she reported, obviously, you know this too. New Jersey actually took it very seriously after everything just kind of blew up.
Yes.
And cases have come down. It's not been so severe in terms of ICU overload as it was when you were going through everything. And they did it right and are slowly reopening. And you guys actually, I'm in Minnesota. You opened a whole lot later than we did. I mean, May 1st is when we started to have things reopen. And I know my parents were saying like mid-June was when you guys started reopening stuff.
Yeah, just about.
Mm-hmm. And everything is now reliant upon the responsibility taken by our own state's government and the situations related into each state. I'm
yeah, that's kind of scary.
It is very scary. I am not able to come back to New Jersey to visit my parents. I haven't been home since December to see them. Just recently, my mom was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and her medication puts her immune system at risk. So she is now even more susceptible to catching COVID if she were exposed. And so the chances of me being able to travel safely are so much slimmer now, even, as everything is blowing up. I'm not going to see my family this year.
Yeah, that's frightening and horrible at the same time.
Right. And, we're talking about our own personal experiences here. We're two of millions of people who are affected by this. And I will say, you talking about your mask, I wear a mask everywhere. I go out I went out for a walk by the lake the other day, and there was not a single person out there wearing a mask. And people having parties, and I'm like, what?
I mean, listen, I'd love to say that over here in Jersey, it's much, much better, and people are wearing masks all the time, but it's not. I mean, listen, I get fatigue, but if you're going to be around a bunch of people, we'll walk our dogs by the park, and there will be people playing basketball. And obviously, it's difficult to wear a mask while you're playing basketball, but the people who are watching them on the sidelines aren't wearing masks. And the people, just hanging out with each other, sitting down, aren't wearing masks, even though it says very clearly masks are required to be in this park. Yeah. People just don't seem to care. And yeah, like I said, I get fatigue, but at the same time, we don't want to go through this again. And we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick, especially with people saying, oh, hey, New Jersey's opening things up. Let's go up there and, vacation up there or something.
Yeah. I mean, this weekend, like you talked earlier, we both had birthdays this last weekend. I haven't seen my team of work cohorts since March, and we haven't gotten together. We haven't seen each other. We've just been experiencing things online, and we've decided that we're going to get together in a socially distant picnic on Workhorse, my boss, on his lawn. Where we will be wearing masks and sitting outside. And we know that this event is only going to last like 90 minutes because it's going to be like 95 degrees and someone's going to have to pee at some point. So we're being responsible. We're doing the things, I mean, I don't want to be in the world of lecturing and trying to talk down to people. I want to share these experiences and let people know that the people out here who have been through it, like Matt, who have been following the rules, like me, we're tired.
Yeah.
We're exhausted.
Listen, you may not want to be in the world of lecturing, but I sure as fuck will. I don't care. It's fine by me. I will lecture some asses right now. And listen, there have been times where we have, like I said, fatigue gets everyone. My wife's birthday is a month before mine to the day, and we had a barbecue and we had like 15 people over.
Right.
And obviously, if you're having a barbecue, not everyone's going to wear a mask, but it was 15 people that we knew, that we had been, relatively in contact with, typically people we had bartended with or served with. Everybody got tested. Everybody made sure that they didn't have fevers. And we tried to social distance as much as possible. And if somebody needed to use the bathroom, they threw their mask on. We wiped everything down when they walked into or out of my building. And just be as smart as you can.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to share in closing related to your experience, or any final words to anyone who you feel like they need to hear it?
Man, I mean, I feel like we've touched. I said I'd lecture, but I don't want to lecture too much now,
Yes.
But listen, guys, it's not fun. I'll leave you with that. Again, as a 34-year-old when I got this, 35-year-old now as of a couple of 5 days ago. It's just not fun. You don't want this. We've had family members that have passed from it. Unexpectedly, obviously. We've had other family members who have come down with it. I've had work colleagues from the job that I unfortunately had to get laid off from who have lost family members from it. There's nothing about this that is not true. And if you get it, there's nothing about this that is enjoyable. It is not just the flu. Maybe for some people it is, but it is, generally speaking, not just the flu. Mm-hmm. That's really all I can give in closing about this and about my personal experience with it, other than what I've said already. Because, listen, just if nothing else, take this shit seriously. Yeah. I know that the fatigue has set in, and I know we're 4-ish months into this, but there's the potential for it to go a lot longer if we don't take it a little more seriously now.
Amen to that. Matt, I want to thank you for joining me today. And I'd like to ask you to let people know where they can find you to give you their thoughts and feedback about your episode.
Sure. Basically, every social media that exists, I am on at _Matloc, MATLOC. Literally everything: Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. YouTube's actually Matloc Tech. I'm a liar there. But yeah, listen, you want to find me, just send me a tweet, and I'm happy to talk about anything. I'm happy to discuss anything. I try to be an open book. You want to talk about this, speak about my personal experience, ask me specific questions that we may not have gone over here, just, shoot me a DM or hop in my Twitch stream. I'm down.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me and giving your unfiltered view, an experience of the COVID-19 virus. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, thanks, Matt. You're awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. I'm glad that we could get this information out there. And thank you so much for doing this podcast. I hope people realize that there are experiences that happen to not just you, but other people out there. And listen to this podcast if you want to know that there is someone else that may have gone through the same thing that you have.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Personal Experience Podcast. And thank you to Matt for sharing his candid thoughts of his experience with COVID-19. I wanted to end the episode with one final personal experience that didn't happen prior to the recording of this episode, but it is now happened since I recorded it and before I'm ready to publish it. So since this is a personal experience show, I want to share one of my own and a message as well. So I, as I mentioned in the show, have not seen my family since December of 2019. And I speak to my parents every week on Skype to see how everybody's doing. It's a regular check-in that we've always done for years since I've lived in Minnesota and they live in New Jersey. And we live in now a time where travel is just not possible, or it is it's unwise, especially with two parents who are in retirement age, and their health definitely is at risk for COVID-19. And the thought of me traveling to see them through airports and different locations to have multiple points of exposure would just be too risky and something I didn't want to do. And this weekend, my father said something to me very seriously, and he said, this is hard, sorry. He said, if your mother and I get this virus, I don't want you to come here. I want you to promise me that you won't come here because you won't be able to do anything if we get it, and we don't want you to expose yourself. This is America. This is where we live. This is the reality, and this is not a hoax. If we can't visit and see our parents, our family, our loved ones, because we're afraid that we can infect them, and have to promise that if they got sick, and God forbid they died, we wouldn't travel to go see them and put ourselves at risk. I wanted you to hear this from my own emotions because this is 100% true. And I don't want anyone else to go through this. Not even in hypothetical, which this is. If I'm emotional like this now, imagine what would happen if this were real. It's not. Everyone's fine. Don't worry. But please, please take this seriously. Thank you. If you would like to nominate or suggest a guest for the show or suggest a topic that you'd like me to cover, you can reach me and the show in a few different ways. You can send an email at personalexperiencepodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet me at JulesRPG, or you can tweet the show at its brand new home on Twitter at PersonalEXPShow. The show is available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Direct Feed, and YouTube. You can find it all there to see it. Thank you for listening to the Personal Experience Podcast. Seek understanding, feel empathy, connect to one another. I'll see you next time.